Alrighty, here we go. Okay, so thank you all for joining us today, and for all of you who are watching this post the live Zoom session. But I am so excited to start our season off talking about interpretation. And all of you have so much knowledge about the EV family and the different aspects of the reserve. And I'm really excited to take each of your strengths and turn those into interpretive talks and really build on the foundation that many of you have had for years. And so I think that today will be a good practice. I do want to introduce Robert Steelquist. He is working with the reserve right now to assist us in developing an interpretive outreach plan. And so he will be joining in and giving some information about that, as well as more information on interpretation, as he's been an interpreter for many, many years. So, and then I will be following up with that as well. But I want to start today. On Friday, I sent out a little late in the evening, but I sent out an email with a few attachments. One of those being, Sheila, hi, good to see you. One of those being the, oh, you're muted right now. There you go.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
One of those being the interpretive panel scavenger hunt. So we often get questions about many, many different things up at the EB house. And so I just wanted to bring some awareness about where some of this information is posted around the reserve. And so I ran around and took some photos and was hoping that you guys would help me identify where all of these different places are. So I would first like to know if anyone could identify all the locations of these panels without looking anything up or going to any places. Was anyone 100% there?
Can you screen share them?
Oh,
I
possibly.
I didn't, I either didn't see that, download it, or grab it.
That's all right. Did anyone, let's see, let me try to screen share. Hang on. Oh.
So my A table anxiety is rising.
It's absolutely fine. Okay.
That's okay, Joanne, I didn't either.
Oh, good.
I don't have it pulled up right now, Patrick, and it's not letting me minimize to go find it, unfortunately.
No problem.
So I will maybe send that again and we'll go over it the next time. But I just want to encourage you guys to take a look. And along with that, we are working on replacing a few of them, updating a few of them. And so those, I was going to go over those as well, but I guess maybe we'll include that in another session here, or if while Bob's speaking, I can somehow get the file pulled up and we'll go over these different panels here and see if you guys can guess where they're located around the reserve. But talking about interpretive panels and updating them, we are looking at different aspects of the reserve that can be improved upon as far as, the outreach and communication of different things. And so this is where Bob is coming in and really helping us this year with that. So Bob, do you mind just introducing yourself and expounding upon the interpretive plan?
Not at all. First of all, it's really a privilege to work on a short-term project that I'm working on with Jordan and Kristen, the staff and the trust board, and the community of Central Whidbey. I have a long-standing interest in Eby's Landing. I worked for the National Park Service at the time when a National Park Service assistant superintendent named Reed Jarvis was detailed with this project of organizing, conceiving, working with the community on in the Coupeville area to really bring the reserve into existence. So my understanding or my knowledge is there was something going on at Eby's goes back to 1978 when the community and the National Park Service began pulling together this radical idea that the National Park Service could actually play a role in a homegrown, a community-based preservation initiative. And as you're all aware, EBS is one of a kind in the country. And that just is a testimony to how novel this idea was and still is. And also, it really reflects what I consider to be the recognition of the importance of, I'm going to use this term here, the middle landscape. We know that there are places like Linwood and towns that are they're the contemporary landscape. And we know there are landscapes like Yosemite and Mount Rainier that are these pristine wild landscapes. Well, the middle landscape is the landscape occupied by people that nevertheless has very, very unique value to it and is worth preservation, is worth looking at differently. It has unique stories in it, but it's also part of where people continue to live their lives, conduct their businesses, farm, do the things that we do. And the recognition of the middle landscape as being very significant is profound because frankly, that's where most of us live. And there are tremendous resources that we do not want to sacrifice to development, and yet we can't turn them into national parks. So how we recognize the middle landscape becomes a real important part of how we inhabit the overall landscape. And you, by living and working and dedicating your efforts to such a place and to an important example and to really this exemplar of this novel idea, you're really performing an important service. I started my first job as an interpreter with the National Park Service in 1980. And interpretation was going through transformation at the time. The old naturalists in national parks were often referred to as nature fakers. And they were sort of, the flat hat National Park Service, very, very wise naturalists who would lead you around and point out flowers and trees and wildlife. It was a very folksy enterprise. And there were interpreters that were very gifted, and there were interpreters that were just sort of encyclopedias. When I came into the work, there was a new concept coming out called thematic interpretation. Jordan's going to get into this quite a bit later, and I'll describe how it plays into the plan in a minute. But the important thing was that in the 40-some years that I've been involved in interpretation, it has transformed and grown and changed. It's been professionalized. Interpretation as we know it, as you practice it, occurs around the world. In natural areas and cultural areas, it's a profession that has really spread globally because it has been really seen as the way to engage people in stewardship and to feed the curiosity that people have about great natural places or historic places. The plan that we're working on is really an update. It's an update of a process of identifying priority messages, identifying the audiences that need to hear those messages, and then also creating messages and themes that really engage people, provoke people, as Freeman Tilden, the founder of interpretation, said, provoke. When we say provoke, we don't just mean startle or create a reaction. The aim that we have of interpretation and the ultimate goal of your work and our work is to provoke the strong empathy or sympathy or attachment to the experience the visitor is having in such a way that will change their lives, in such a way that it will make them more knowledgeable, but more important, stronger advocates of this place. And I want to pose a question. We don't have to go around the room to answer it, but I want each of you to think about the moment and how it was that you became interested in EBs. What was it, the question that you asked or the question that got answered or the person that inspired you that led you to learn more, follow your own curiosity, and ultimately to do what you're doing now. And that was to commit your time to advocating for this place. That's exactly the journey that we're trying to create in people, and not necessarily have them all be volunteers at EBs, but possibly those people who might be interested at some point in serving on the trust board, or those people that may want to go back to their community and become advocates for historic preservation of beautiful houses or landscapes in their own communities, or people who will write letters to Congress or the mayor of Cookeville to advocate. So the arc that we're looking for in interpretation as its outcome is this kind of personal engagement. How do we get there? First of all, people come to EBs, and many new people have come since COVID because of the recreation opportunities. These are newcomers to, some of them to outdoor recreation, some of them to this particular landscape. Something attracted them, and the experience of being on that prairie or on the bluff or walking through town and looking at these houses, something has been triggered in them. And our job in interpreting, whether it's through signs or through a personal interpretation that you have to carry out, is this job of finding out what that enchantment is and building it. And so that person's experience with EBs grows into something that they want to follow up on. They want to take the next step. So it's really, really a critical role. Research has shown that the work that you do, the interpersonal contact, the connection that you make with people is the most powerful form, the most effective form of interpretation there is. What is it about meeting you that really, really motivates people? Well, first of all, you're a person. You know, you are there, you're a presence. You can ask them questions. You know, a sign can't ask questions in a meaningful way. They can ask you questions. Your very example serves as an inspiration. I can't remember how many times as a National Park Service naturalist, a young person would say, "How did you get your job?" I knew right away that that person was connected already to the experience they were having, and that my job was going to be easier. If they really wanted to know how I got my job, maybe they were thinking that in their future, there was a possibility of becoming an advocate, a National Park Service naturalist, working in parks and doing this work. So you're on the front lines. You have the power that no sign, no brochure, no map, no regulatory sign will ever have. You are able to form relationship. You're able to bring your own passions, your own interests directly into the conversation with visitors. And with any luck at all, or with any skill at all, this arc will begin for that visitor from what may have been just, you know, how did Isaac Eby die, into them becoming an advocate, a strong advocate, your successor perhaps as a volunteer, or in some other way, they're changing their life. The plan we're working on is really focusing on, to begin with, the priority issues and management objectives that communication can enhance. Simple enough. Let's think about what those might look like. Parking problems, okay? Yes, indeed, there's a role for communication in the parking problems that we all know exist. So it's really important from my standpoint, from a planning standpoint, that we anchor interpretive themes and communication messaging in excuse me, I'm gonna fix that. There we go. Sorry about that. It's really important that the interpretation and communication that we carry out is related to the management of the reserve. You know, there are behaviors that are very important. There are reasons that people should reasons that people should be mindful of this landscape as a fragile place. So in the process of planning, we're starting with what are management issues that are important, and then building. But again, I really want to emphasize that this experience the visitor has and your role in that introduction, in the encouraging, is really, really going to be critical. I think I've covered my main points. Jordan, did I leave anything out?
No, that was a great introduction. Did you want to talk about any feedback that they might have?
Yes, in fact, I would. So we've started out working on these management issues. We divided them into 3 categories. One is protection, protecting the historic resources. For example, the EV house or the ferry house or the trail landscapes or archaeological resources. Protection is a really important piece. The second piece is visitor management and visitor experience. Some of you are maybe familiar, there's been a lot of questioning lately about how does EVs interpret the Native American history and experience. Part of that really comes from a sense of every visitor, we want every visitor to feel welcome. We want every visitor to find a part of their story that intersects with the EV story. So visitor management and visitor experience are examples of issues. The third area is the nature of the partnership really that EVs represents. It's kind of difficult to explain to people. It's, you know, it's neither a horse nor a zebra. It's some strange hybrid and that I touched on in this middle landscape piece. So we've got these issues and we want to link our communication, our interpretive efforts toward those issues. I've asked staff and they've been very forthcoming in their survey of things that are important. I've asked the trust board, they've been very forthcoming. We're easing into now the role of partners and friends and family in terms of what you think are some important things that need to be covered. You will have experience of you know, being out there and encountering a visitor who had a question or a concern or something that none of us have heard about. You know, they may be complaining about dogs or they may be complaining about one thing or another. You have some direct experience, and I would be very, very interested, and Jordan can help work this out. But if you've got some thoughts on, again, management issues, pretend for a minute that we're in a big meeting, say in the big room at the library, and we've got flip charts up and we got a group of the public there or you all there, and we're just doing a flip chart session. We need these to be kind of general and shorthand, something we gather quickly. We can come back to more detail as we need. But Jordan's going to send you a little form we've been using, and I'm hoping you'll get a chance to think this through, jot some notes down, get them back to her, and then I can fold these into our process. Eventually, we're going to look at issues. We're going to look at the messages and the audiences that we need to address. We're going to look at the mechanics of how we really would implement this kind of messaging through an interpretive program or media. And then eventually say, okay, this might be best in an app, or this might be best just as a one-time post on the website, or this may be a reason to have a new sign, or this may be a reason to have a sign that is a little more explicit in rules and regulations about how people conduct themselves. So you are at the beginning of a process here with us, and with I think as we proceed, at the end of this process, you're going to have some new tools that we're going to develop to help you do your job better. Again, I'd like to really commend you on the commitment that you've made, and I'd like to commend Jordan particularly. She's got a great crew here, and as I observe her work, she's doing a really, really great job. So thanks for your commitment, and we're all involved in a real exciting process here, and a resource that clearly we all really value highly and are willing to commit ourselves to. So again, thank you. Thanks, Jordan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bob. Joanne, do you have a question?
Is that a question?
Yes, I missed the third item under management because I was busy managing my notes.
Okay, the third is the nature of the partnerships.
Thank you.
You know, a lot of people do not understand, what is the trust board? Wait a minute, is this a national park? You know, or, wait a minute, or is this a state park? Or is this what? So, you know, and we know that that confusion sometimes is baffling, and EBS is a complicated landscape. If we were in a national park, we'd know certain rules apply, but you know, what about walking in Wilbur's Field? You know, that's not going to be something we do in a national park because it wouldn't exist, you know. So
Right.
we really want to make the complex relationship easier to understand.
Right.
Yes.
Wow, that was very cogently presented. I thank you very much. Do you go by Robert or Bob?
Well, friends know me as Bob. My publishers prefer Robert because it gives me a little more gravitas. But
Okay.
please call me
Okay, Bob. So, who's the father of interpretation? Freeman who?
Stephen Tilden,
How do you spell that last name?
Tilden.
Okay.
And his famous work was Interpreting Our Heritage.
Okay. Wow. And then, I don't know, Jordan, do you want comments or?
Sure, if you'd like. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I'll write something up on the virtual whiteboard for you to consider. I'm fairly new out there, but everyone knows that problem dog that comes up, the yellow lab that's never on a leash, that disturbs people, disturbs children, disturbs other dogs. It's a constant problem. I know Kristen and Carol and everybody else has contacted, I think, the owner, but nothing happens. That needs to be, in my view, addressed. That's a problem up there.
Yes,
I'm
thank you.
gonna
And
write there right now, the yellow dog. I know that dog. I mean, not personally, but I've had the experience that you're describing.
Most people are really good about their dog
Mhm.
being on a leash and stuff, but you know, some people don't. They just, I'm sorry, you're supposed to just keep on walking. But that yellow dog is an issue in my view.
I've never met him. Does he live out there somewhere?
Apparently, Carol, Jordan, you tell me if I'm wrong on this. He's owned by somebody down below.
Oh, okay. I mean, I like dogs. They seem to like me. I was just surprised I'd never seen him.
Yeah,
You will.
you will. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell him to go home.
My other comment is, and then I'll be quiet, is Sally had out there, which we used, or I used, the kids really got a kick out of it when we gave them the oath, her NPS flat hat. And I'm hoping, Jordan, that we can get another one out there for the kids. They get a big kick out of that.
Yeah, I have a couple at home. I can bring in one. I might line it with something, but yeah, we can definitely consider that this year. I'll have to look into what we can use to sanitize between heads and such, but
Yeah, that's true.
I'll definitely
Okay.
take a look at that.
Well, we'll be quarantined between uses.
Yeah.
Just saying, I mean,
Something.
nothing's going to, whatever.
Coming from a social worker standpoint, I worried about bed bugs when I first saw it. It
I
was
was
like,
thinking lice. Yeah. Sandy,
yeah.
you have
Head lice.
a question?
Well, you're talking about interpretive signs and interpreting the prairie for visitors who come. And the one group that I have never figured out how to get them to see the prairie are the people who are just there to hike, and they go marching past the house.
Mhm.
And I don't know how you engage them, but many people yeah, there's a house here, and they just keep walking by. And I think one way in would be to help them to see all the different organizations that manage the prairie, somehow there. But I've never figured out a way to say anything but hi as they walk by.
Here's a thought. First of all, and I'll just use a sort of comparable but on a larger scale example. Every year, hundreds of people hike the Pacific Crest Trail from Mexico to Canada.
Mhm.
And in the process, they cross through perhaps a dozen national parks and perhaps 15 wilderness areas. And it's very interesting because their whole orientation, I worked as a volunteer after retirement as a wilderness ranger in the Pacific, on the Pacific Crest Trail in the Pacific Wilderness. You would ask somebody, where are you going? And they thinking, like their campsite tonight? And they say, Canada. And I think it's comparable. There are a lot of people, and we've seen them, especially in COVID times, who, particularly in the off season, but also in the height of the season, they have just wanted to flee outdoors. And whether it's Carr Creek Park in Seattle or Mount Si, up the Snoqualmie Valley, they are just looking for the closest trail. They're just looking for fresh air. They're hoping there aren't going to be a lot of people, which we know has, not been the case, particularly on the Bluff Trail. But and then the other thing that I've noticed too about EBs is there are quite a few people who are strictly local. It's they live there. They perhaps think they already know it all, and they are just out for their 10,000 steps, right? So engaging them is going to always be a matter of using creativity. How do you stop somebody with a provocative question? You could actually ask them if they're simply interested in hiking. Have you noticed more impacts on the trail? Are you seeing behaviors that give them an opportunity to own the prairie in a way that makes them think of, oh, this is something other than just where I put my feet. So those are their eyes and ears out there. Or you could even ask them, have you seen the yellow dog? And this is the way of starting that conversation. And you're skillful, you have tricks in your bag. With luck, you can turn it into maybe a minute-long or a 5-minute-long conversation instead of just tromp, 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 tromp. Make them part of the story.
Definitely. All right. Well, thank you for that, Bob, and thank you for your guys' comments as well. Sandy, that's a really good thought, and I jotted down a couple ideas, but I will definitely look into developing something that we can maybe use to slow them down, bring them in for a minute with distance, of course. But I want to take just a few minutes here and talk to you guys about interpretation. So many of you, like I mentioned earlier, have such a solid foundation. Your knowledge is so vast out there. I'm amazed every time I hear a new aspect that, each of you are just so knowledgeable about. And I've learned so much from each of you. I started as an interpretive ranger of sorts when I was 15. And so working at a visitor center and, telling people all these facts and different things was what I was doing. It wasn't until my 4th season that I got a brand new supervisor. And he said to me that interpretation is like a buffet. And I was really confused by that. He said, interpretation is like a buffet. You provide all of these different things and people pick and choose what they're going to take home with them. They're going to pick and choose what they take to their table and eat. Another way to look at that is if you're at a fancy restaurant and they come by with those desserts, right? There's something different each of those options that caters to the chocolate lover. It caters to those that like the sweet and the savory, the ones with bacon on top. That's me. It caters to these different people with different preferences or different interests. And so that is what interpretation is. I was speaking with Kristen yesterday and she had mentioned, you know, some people love the facts. What year was this? What year was that? How many square feet is this house? How many people lived in it? How, you know, all the numbers. And other people want to know, why wasn't Winfield married? He is so handsome. Or, where did all their children go? What's the story? Why did they migrate so much throughout the country? And so people want those different things. We have professionals come in that are professional preservationists, or I had a gentleman this summer, he worked with like insecticides and things. And so we wanted to know like what we spray out there. I'm not sure, just people have so many different interests, and none of us are experts on every single subject, right? Many of you are professionals and very knowledgeable in your field. However, we're not, we don't know 100% of everything. And so with that, I definitely want to encourage each of you to use your strengths in interpretation. So what we want to do is offer sort of a variety of things that allows people not only to create an intellectual connection with the resource, with the EB House, with the reserve, but also an emotional connection. And so people, I think, expect when they go into the house to learn something new, to have an intellectual connection. What I don't think they often expect is to have that emotional connection too. And that's what we really want to grab out of them. I really appreciated Bob's question. What initially grabbed you? Who made you decide to dedicate some time out to the EB House? What is your emotional connection to the reserve? Recently, we went hiking down in Utah, and I just stood at that edge of this canyon and was breathtaking, and my emotional connection was seeing my daughter, just eyes this big around, looking down into a canyon, seeing her first experience with something that grand. And so that was a connection to me that I will hold. Do I remember how many little things were, I read the interpretive signs, but do I remember any of those facts? No, I remember that emotional connection, that experience that I had. And so that's what we want to create with our visitors. So a couple things, along with the attachment I sent with the interpretive panels, I also sent a worksheet. And so it's sort of a miniature version of what I used to use in my longer interpretive talks. So what I would love to happen out there is for on the schedule, maybe at like 11 o'clock, someone gives an interpretive talk, and at 2 o'clock, someone gives an interpretive talk. However, this year, I don't think that's wise, as it would probably draw crowds and different things, and we don't really want that happening. So what is our interpretive opportunity this year? I believe on average this past summer, people stayed in the house an average of 5 to 10 minutes. That seemed pretty standard. And so that is the time we have to make things happen. Now, some people would be outside and wander around for quite a while, even lingering as long as a half hour. So times can definitely range. What are we looking for? What am I looking for in you guys? What time frame? I would say about 5 to 10 minutes. So the form that I sent can be used for much longer talks. I use that form for my 5-hour interpretive talk and for a 7-hour interpretive talk. So it can be used for a much longer talk, but we want to sort of shrink it down and use it only for 5 to 10 minutes. So I pulled up an example here of that, and I want to cover a couple of things before we get into that. I want to first talk about our goal out there. So what is our goal? It's to have visitors explore the meanings of natural, historical, and cultural significances of EB's Landing, right? So have them connect with that. So because of that, what we're going to define as themes must flow directly from the significance of those resources. So each of you, I believe, have a strength. Each of you have a different connection, or could have a different connection with these different aspects of the reserve. I jotted a few down, just some connections I make in my mind that I feel like you guys would be knowledgeable about. I wrote down Patrick, law. So Patrick has that, connection with law, and Winfield has the connection. So does Isaac. And so that was a connection I thought in my head. I remember a story Lou told me about dropping his child off for a play date out at the EB house. And that is a really interesting connection that I think could be expounded upon. I could see the bishops bringing out a photo of them as children in the reserve, or something like that, making that connection. Christy is big with the water travel, and so using that knowledge, perhaps delving into why Eby's Landing was such a great place to land and water travel out there. Sandy has super knowledge about all of the clothing, and his past educators, Joanne and Sandy, and maybe more. I don't know. I can't remember everyone's occupations, but what did education look like back then? And so I feel like so many of you have these different things that you can pull from and put together for a theme. But what is a theme? So our primary interpretive themes are these overarching stories that enable people to explore the significance of the reserve. And so something Bob said last week that really stuck with me, and I wanted to punch it in here as well. He said, when you have a good theme, no one will walk away saying, so what, right? If someone comes in and I say, and I did this summer, which I'm sort of kicking myself about, but I said, oh, people lived in here, and this year, it was rented out this year. It's been a national park under their governance since this year. And then they head out the door. And really though, so what? What does that even mean? Cool facts, Jordan, but what does that mean to me? And so taking that and actually giving them a connection, and they shouldn't be walking away saying, so what? So that's a challenge to me, and I hope a challenge to you as well. So this past year, I included this book as a thank you to each of you who worked this past summer. But if you didn't get a copy of this, I have some in the library here that I would be more than happy to pull out and put your name on it. You can also get them on Amazon, and I'm also trying to get more in so that way you can have your own copy. But it's Interpreting for Park Visitors by William Lewis. And it's got some great tips and scenarios that sort of break down interpretation. But if you got it handy, page 38 has some great tips about themes. It says a theme should be stated as a short, simple, and complete sentence. We can each make up a sentence, right? It should only contain one idea. It should reveal the overall presentation, overall purpose of the presentation, be specific, and be as interestingly and motivating as possible, interestingly worded and motivating as possible. And so I will show you an example of an old talk I used to use. But what are the advantages of using a theme? Why are we breaking this down so much? Why are you making us think so hard about this? Well, it limits your subjects covered, right? So many times we can talk and talk and talk about these different things. We can go from food storage in, are you heading out, Bob? Oh, you? We can talk about food storage in the blockhouse, and then jump down to the death of Isaac Eby, and then come back and talk about the preservation of the house, and we can just go all over the place. And that is really hard to keep a theme together in that, and for them to come away and have a connection to each of those things, right? Of course, we'll answer questions if they're asked, but keeping it contained there. It steers away from ticking off dates or giving lists of what happened. And that is really easy to do out there. And not saying we can't do that, but I think it's good to sort of have it organized and keep with a theme. So a couple themes that I wanted to throw out there that you could use are very simple. One, it's several important events have occurred on the prairie. Okay, that's pretty simple, right? And with that, you can tie some things in there. The death of Isaac Eby created fear in the area and spurred on the building of the blockhouses. That might be another one that you could go with. Or maybe the Eby family tree was greatly affected by tuberculosis. and more buildings than direct relations remain. Something like that. Some of those are a little bit more complex for 5 to 10 minutes, but it's just an idea to sort of create that tunnel vision on, on one major theme and work on connections. So I would like you guys to take the next 2 minutes and think about a theme or think about some aspect of the reserve or something you would feel comfortable talking about, something you would want to pull people into. And that might be hard because I know several of you have different passions, many different passions about the reserve or the family, but I want you to narrow it down to one and try to put it in one complete sentence for me. And then we're going to share. So time to get a little scary here. All right, I'll give you another minute.
Hmm.
All right, I see some people ready to go. And if you're still working, go ahead and complete your sentence. But I would love a brave volunteer first, and then I'll just start assigning. Oh, all right, Sheila, go ahead.
Well, I've said the same thing last season over and over again. And I always say when they come in, this is the home of Jacob and Sarah Eby, who came to Whidbey Island in 1855. Their son, Isaac Eby, was the first permanent white settler who came in 1850. And then I usually talk about the family, or I talk about the non-white people who were there, which is significant from what Bob said, because that's been a criticism that we haven't talked about it. And if I talk about the non-white people who came, because I have mentioned that Isaac was just the first white guy, I usually talk about Monroe's Landing because my home is near there. I show them where it is, and I describe the Indian encampment. I point out where my house is, and we actually had a midden beach. And so we were we had the archaeologists when we built our home. We had 3 representatives of the different tribes that came out and blessed the land, because fortunately they only found the beach and not human remains or tools or anything. And so that was really what I know, because it's right down the street. And then a lot of times they ask me more about the tribes, which I don't know much about. So I'm happy that we're going to address that with the guy from the Historic Society. I've heard him speak at Sound Waters, but I just don't remember a lot of what he told me, like who were the tribes and, more about what they were doing. And then if no one's really interested in pursuing questions about the tribes, then I go back to talking about the family. Who lived here? How many people lived here? How were they related to the, who was the granddaughter and who was the guy who didn't have a wife and had the law office and all of that. But I talk a lot about the family. And that's enough to say, because like whoever said it, they're all on their way for a hike. 5-10 minutes max. Right. And it would be wonderful if more people ask more questions, but a lot of times they're passing through. And who can blame them? Because if it's a nice day, that's where I'm headed today. In fact, I might turn this off and go around 11. Sorry about that, but it's such a nice day. If you see me in back of the trust board office, I'm just hiking along. And I just think that's what people are out for, because we just have had a bad COVID year and people want to be outside. So anyway, I'll be quiet now.
Jordan, could I just insert some? I had a thought, I think, for example, the focus on family and family life is really important. It humanizes, it brings home. But one of the things that it might be interesting to draw out would be, instead of saying more, maybe ask. And here's a
Right.
question that I always intrigues me. If I'm in
What do you want to know about this family?
Well, so here's what here's the way I approach it, or would approach it. You're inside the EB house and you say, a family lived here. And now here's the key part of the question. If these walls could speak, what do you think you would hear right now about that family's life? And it would give people an opportunity to just, okay, there was tensions with Native Americans, or are the crops going to fail? Or, should we be, at any rate, it's going to provoke the question. And so that if you leave people hanging on that question where they've deeply personalized that experience, then they can go on their hike and think about it and maybe
Right.
give an answer on the way back, right? Just a thought, just a suggestion.
I think it's a great suggestion.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Anyone else want to share?
Can't
Christy?
hear you. You were
Christy?
muted, Jordan, just a moment ago.
Oh, okay.
There you go. I'm ready.
Okay, I'm gonna have Christy first, and then you can, Joanne. Thank
Oh,
you.
sorry, Christy.
Okay, Joanne.
You're way down there. You're over there.
Oh, okay. Well, the sentence or the theme that I thought of was the connection and link on the prairie with its continuous use over the decades, the native tribes, the EB family farming, the present day farmers and residents, and the continuous use of that landscape by people that lived here for generations.
Yeah.
And then I had a quick question just to maybe discuss later. We have a lot of interpretive panels in the house, and people come and some of them are study them and they read them and they stand there and read, they look at the map. I struggle with the thought of interrupting them with my talking, and want to be considerate of them while they're doing that. So sometimes I just say, please let me know if you have questions. I'll let you enjoy the interpretive panels here. Other people are quick to talk. So that's always a struggle for me, trying to be polite and courteous to people who are enjoying the materials. And I understand the need to draw them in emotionally, draw them in with a discussion, while also letting them enjoy in their way what's there. So that's just a question on my part.
Of course. And I came across that a lot this summer as well. Some people, like you said, read every word of every panel. And my mother-in-law is that person. And so I actually asked her about it. Do you prefer just to read all of this, or do you like talking to people too? English isn't her first language. And she said, well, I like reading because I can take it in at my own pace. And she said, but I don't mind when people explain things to me as well, And so a thought with that is, yes, let them soak in all of that information, but we thankfully sort of catch them in that little tiny hallway as they exit. And so that's always a good place to follow up and see, if they do have that extra time and engage them that way. But I completely agree and understand, chatting with someone for 5 to 10 minutes may not be on everyone's schedule. It may not be right for everyone. But if we have it prepared, we're ready for when it is right. Yeah. Thank you, Christy.
If I can add something too.
Sure.
I remember in my first years as an interpreter, and picture this: Hurricane Ridge, the meadow is in full bloom, summer, the mountains are out, everything. I've got my themes and I've got my talk and I've got the time allowed, and we're walking along, and I'm really into why lupin is important, adding nitrogen, and it helps you see the progression of things that grow in the meadow. Doggone it, a golden eagle flies by, and everybody turns to look at the golden eagle, and I've been abandoned. Well, I came to understand that the distractions, the things that are pulling people away from, my weighty words, are really a gift. That is showing me that people are engaged. And so the distractions actually become part of the game. How quickly and how limber are you in pivoting on the subject and paying attention and reading where people's attentions are going. And, you will understand, you can memorize what's on those signs, and you can find ways of prying open those words with another question or with an additional fact or something. So as frustrating as it can be, the distractions are really, the money makers for these things that people have out there. Yeah, suddenly golden eagles probably should be a lot more important than lupin.
Sometimes.
Thank you, Bob. Sometimes. Joanne?
Oh, thank you. Yes, I totally agree with that, because pivoting to what's of interest is good for, if people are right. For today, I wrote my sentence, sorry to rabble on, about immigration, but I tend to steer clear of just Isaac Eby losing his head, unless someone's very interested in the blockhouses and why they're there, and then it tells why people became extremely interested in their protection. However, as I'm getting of an age, I like to point out the immigration aspect. I said during another talk that I lived close to the Oregon Trail, so I grew up with that idea of white settlement. So who came, why they came, what their ages were, because I think it's remarkable that Jacob and Sarah were the grand age of 59 and 61, I believe. And then if people show an interest, the right of eminent domain and white settlement and what that meant for the native people. So, yeah.
Yes, I love that.
I love
No.
that. I love to point out that picture of the prairie then and the prairie now, and it's the same. I love that. And so that leads to other conversations, but that's good.
Definitely. And I think talking about the...
Uh-oh.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Well, I think the talking about immigration or travelers, that's very easy for them to connect with, even, as they've traveled and different things. I think that is a great connection there as well. And we'll talk about a little bit about universal connections right here in a little bit. Lou, did you have your hand up as well?
Yeah, excuse me. I had some engagement with people in the last couple of years about the EBs had such a difficult trip to get here and how far they went. And then today we stand in that same spot and we can see the shoreline and the pastures and the mountain, and why wouldn't they have come that far to be at that particular spot? People can relate to their journey, the EB's journey, and then the visitor's journey to get to that spot. So I've been able to engage people on that theme.
That is a great one, definitely. Sandy?
The connection to the Oregon Trail is a strong trigger for people out at the house. You mentioned the Oregon Trail and their eyes light up because they know something about that. And now they're at a house where people lived who came from the Oregon Trail. So I think that's a really good in. I picked the one that's hardest for me, but the one that I found really rewarding. My sentence is, the uniqueness of the reserve is in the many formal and informal partnerships in this living community. Because what I do is, and I think I'm going to take one of those little maps with me and kind of mark things. I point out to people that they drove here on a county road. They parked next to the cemetery, which is taken care of by the town. And when they're walking out to the house, they're passing leased land for farming. And when they get to the house, they're on national park property. And as they go farther, they're into the territory that the Nature Conservancy is interested in. And I find that that gives them a sense of how many different kinds of organizations are working together to keep this landscape going. And I would love to be able to figure out a way to hook those hikers with that idea. And I will dwell on thinking about that one, because I think if they can see the connections to the land that they're walking across, I would think it could make the hiking more valuable.
Definitely. I think I'm gonna bring a fishing pole out for Sandy with a big hook to grab their backpacks and reel them in so she can talk to them.
Sandy?
Rich.
Sandy?
Oh,
Yeah.
My connection to the reserve really started as a hiker 40 years ago. It was one of the first places I hiked when I moved to Seattle, from the Northeast. And I was really drawn to the bluff, the sound, Admiralty Strait, the mountains across it, Mount Baker in the distance, the prairie, the whole thing. And I was in an academic program, and I wasn't sure I wanted to stay there. And I spent one afternoon just sitting on a bluff thinking about my future. And it's always sort of resonated with me. And about 5 years ago, I retired several years before that. When the opportunity presented itself, I wound up moving onto the reserve from Seattle. I actually live within walking distance of the Jacob Eby house. And I was thinking of something, maybe this is more perspective. I don't do this now, but living here makes me realize that even more so, it's the unique environment, the natural environment that we live in, and all of the elements of it, whether it's the mountains out there, the sea, the fact that we're in a rain shadow, the beaches and kind of the geology of the bluffs and how those change over time, the prairie itself, the wind. We're in one of the windiest places on Puget Sound, which is both good and sometimes bad, and it is a fact of life, that you learn to live with here. And, the sun can be kind of baking in the summertime, even though this is not a tropical environment. It's pretty intense. There's all those things there. Some of that hikers might relate to. And it's something that people who lived here historically had to deal with as well. It's not changing. It's always been there. And it's constant for the reserve, going back millennium, if not, longer.
So putting all that in a single sentence, what would you say is sort of your connecting that?
I didn't really put it into a full sentence. It's just a connection to the natural environment, the sea, the mountains, the prairie, the forest, the rain, the wind, etc.
Yeah, the connection to the natural resources of the reserve. Yeah, that's great, Rich. Thank you so much for sharing that. And speaking of that hot sun, I don't know if any of you did, but this summer when I'd come back from the Eby house, I'd have a mask tan right here. So my forehead was brown and my chin was white. It was a summer. Okay, Sally, did you have one?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, Sandy, if you worked with Roger Sherman, his way of getting the hikers was running out of the house and saying, "The house is open, come on in." And a lot of them did. He was a very big man. So, and I agree about getting people to look outside and appreciate it's not natural, it's not pristine. It's prairie that it was worked by the farmers and by the Native Americans before the farmers. But I do like to point out occasionally that what they are seeing, their children and their grandchildren will also be able to come and visit and see the same thing. Because I think it's remarkable that the people of that area got together nearly 50 years ago and decided that this was worth preserving, that their way of life was worth preserving. And I love to point that out. The prairies, the farms, and the people.
It's a magical place.
Yeah.
That was a very, very good example of a theme. I just jotted this. You know, what they see, their children and grandchildren will see, and that just opens the conversation to all these different points that we do see. You know, the mountains, you know, the prairie, the wind. You know, we see all these things. So, you know, to me, that's a really strong theme. And it can lead in a lot of directions, as you pointed out. It's the commitment that people have been making since the 1970s to that place. And it's all of those natural elements that Rich described. So I really commend you on that as a real synthetic vision. It's a great way to build the conversation that can go in many, many directions.
Certainly. Patrick? Patrick, go ahead.
Okay, so a couple of things. First, if those of you have not checked out Rich's website, I did last week. It's incredible. Rich, what you put on there and your photos are just amazing. My sentence, I guess, was the geology and Native American cultivation of the prairie. I'm fascinated by those matters, and talk about pivoting. I'm talking about the geology, which is, you know, I'm learning. And I ended up, fellow kind of stopped me mid-sentence. A young man stopped me mid-sentence and says, well, you know what? I'm working on my PhD at the University of Washington. I mean, that's happened to all of us in some aspect of geology. And I learned a tremendous amount just listening to him for 20 minutes.
Mhm.
I love that when visitors have a niche that they know about. Another example kind of relates to what you said, Jordan. The fellow that was out there last summer and looking at the blockhouse, the deterioration on the south side, and he was a pest control guy. And he says, you know what you got here are, they're coming from the inside. I can't remember what he said. So I pass that information on to you, Jordan. I'm hoping that will be addressed. The other comment I would have on your virtual whiteboard, Bob, is I don't know how many times, I know it's happened to all of us, where people are cruising by, a lot of them are Coopville people, and said, oh, you're open? I said, yeah. He said, oh God, I've been out here like 50 times, you're never open.
Heard that too.
So if there's some way to better publicize, or maybe we do anyway, and they're just not paying attention, but when the house is open, is something maybe that you can weave into your planning.
Many of those people are the ones who hike early in the morning or late in the evening.
Yes. And so, like what you said, I love telling the story about the Winfield's window in the blockhouse, and the fun story about how he submitted to the territorial bar over in Port Townsend. People get a kick out of that. Yeah, so like I love learning about and sharing if they're interested. I mean, I've learned the hard way on this. I mean, you're right. Some people just want to be like Christy said, you know, reading the panels and maybe have a question or two, and others are, I like what we do with the kids. I really enjoy that. I can't tell you how much joy it is to watch a young mother with her iPhone filming her child reciting the oath. They just love that. Anyway, That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Patrick. Did anyone else have a sentence?
No, my sentence was the geology and Native American cultivation of Eevee's Prairie.
Thank you, Patrick. Great. Carol or Howard?
Yeah, the whole sentence thing, I'm an introvert, and when I go to places, I kind of wade in there and feel my way around. And it probably my clinical training as well, is I don't just talk to people. I kind of feel them out and see where they're coming from. And so I generally start out with whoever said this is the Jacob and Sarah Eby house, and explain that they came on the Oregon Trail, which is my connection, because my husband and I came here from Lincoln, Nebraska in 2 big trucks with 2 old cats on a 4-day trip. And these people on the Oregon Trail made maybe 14 miles a day, and that was a good day from about the same location. So I don't do a sentence. I just sort of start a conversation and go from there. But that's my own preference. I'm sort of put off by people who have their own agenda with me and when I'm visiting places. And so it's like, just kind of feel this out and see where it goes. You get clues too. They look at the wall, they look at the map, they look at the panels, or they just head for the hiking table and leave. So I don't have a sentence except welcome to the Jacob and Sarah Eby home, and see kind of where that goes.
Yeah.
I love it. My dress. I don't even have to say that. I just stand on the porch. And that really works well.
Yes.
You should try the Roger Sherman trick.
I saw it. I mean, I've seen. I've said
Run out there and catch him.
He was wonderful.
Yeah. His last summer, he would be out there standing with a cane, and he'd wave his cane and just say a little bit of something. And when somebody older gets your attention, you listen. So he had a good pull.
Well, some of you know this too. Like somebody said, "Hey, Roger, why do you like working the Sunday morning shift?" Oh, because that way you don't have to go to church.
All right. Is that all the sentences we have? All of our thematic thoughts here? All right. All right. So the last just couple things I'm going to breeze through here is we each sort of gathered what we like to talk about, or what we could focus on out there. And Bob helped us put those into sentences there as well. But I want to talk about universal concepts. So back to Freeman Tilden, he said, any interpretation that does not somehow relate what is being displayed or described to something within the personality or experience of the visitor will be sterile. And so sterile, right? Not yielding any fruit really from our efforts there. So we want to make sure that it connects there and yields some fruit, so to say. So universal concepts touch the personality and the experience of the visitor. So I appreciated what Carol said about sort of feeling it out. What is our visitor's personality? What are they interested in? And catering to that. Even though we've prepared our own themes in our mind, our own way to navigate these different topics to a connection, that we don't have to necessarily, as you said, like make them follow our agenda. We can definitely yield to their personality. And that's why I, would love for you guys to explore multiple themes so that way you can cater. And just like Bob said, the more that we explore the relationship between tangible resources and intangible, or these universal concepts, it will strengthen our skills in being able to turn that into a question, to turn it into a reflection, and get them to experience it deeper than just the quick knowledge of facts. So I wanted to just give some examples of universal concepts. And so that is something that Bob mentioned: community, family, survival, protection. I'm trying to think of different aspects out at the Eby house. Loss, that's a big one at the Eby house that I'm on. And these are different things that people connect with. And we can use several techniques to help explain that as well. Asking visitors where they're from, carrying props if you have different things like that. An activity, I used to explain whale blubber by sticking kids' hands in this mitt full of Crisco. And Crisco, is that what it's called? The little lard, whatever it is. Anyways, they bake with. And so they would sort of feel that, and we would immerse in water, and they would feel that blubber of sorts, really come in around their hand and keep it warm. Anyway, so an activity or, a dance, if you wanted to, anything to bring them in and to connect. So I want to show you on my screen really quick the form that I had filled out here. And this is just an example of something I've done in the past, and possibly what you guys would be interested in looking at as well. So I put the one I sent you guys has the EB house there as our program location and stuff. But this is something I did out at a glacier summer of 2016. And my title was Dangers, Strangers, and Park Rangers. And so people love that because they're all strangers to each other, right? Strangers to me. And I talked about the dangers of the area. And so it says right here, primary tangible resources. I used stone, the glacier that was out there, willow, moose poop, this bear scratch on a tree, silts, the river, an old photo. And so I had all of these things planned. Now this was an hour-long talk, so I needed a lot of these different resources to refer to, but you could just have one if you wanted and had that on hand to draw people in, or you could keep a folder with you, or however you want to do that. So my goal was to inform visitors of the dangers of the local area, as well as connect them with the topics surrounding change. And that's a really big thing. Where I worked, climate change was really, you could see it happening, and just change in general over time as the glacier receded, different things like that. Intangible meanings are those underlying universal concepts I mentioned: time, change, protection, action, responsibility, and sort of those are things everyone can identify with. I had one part of my hike where I talked about protection and moose, how they aren't carnivores. They're not there to eat you, but more people are killed by moose every year, or injured, I should say, than by bears in Alaska there. And so they're protecting their young. And so as a mother, I can identify with that sort of thing. Knowledge of the audience. And so I always expected visitors from all over the world. Some regularly came there every summer or every so many summers, and some were brand new. So I expected that every time. And I would say that's pretty accurate out at the EB house. Like we said, there's a lot of locals, but there's a lot of people who come from all over the world or all over the state of Washington. My essential theme or question, the passing or theme statement, the passing of time always brings change. What is your part in that? And so we would walk along these signs that had dates of where the glacier was at these different times, and sort of seeing, what is your part in this change? So I always had pre-programmed notes, what I needed to do. I needed to make sure the trail conditions were safe. I had my junior ranger books, my safety measures are taken into place. And we need to think about that too this summer, as far as masks. Are we sanitized? Do we have distance? Is everything stocked? That sort of thing. I would encourage you guys to have an introduction. Some of you are welcome to the Jacob and Sarah EB house. Sheila gave us a great, standard introduction that she always gave. And mine here was welcome to Kenai Fjords. I'm Ranger Jordan. I'm thrilled that you've joined me on my walk today as we learn about dangers, strangers, and parked rangers of Exit Glacier. So you guys feel free to read through this here if you'd like. But what I would do is I would pull out a photo, and I said, I want you to look at a photo of these two cute kids. This is my brother and I at Exit Glacier in 2003. As you can see, time has certainly changed me. And as we walk, you will see the change in the glacier as well. And so I will be honest with all of you, I don't remember this visit hardly at all. As we take this walk together over the next hour, let us not fall prey to the danger of indifference, but soak in every moment and remember what we experienced today, because the glacier is always changing. And so that is something I try to draw them in, make sure that they were present through the walk, because when they come back the next year, that glacier is going to have receded and not look the same. So definitely get familiar with your audience, which so many of you are great at that and pulling it in. Oh, you're from Nebraska, whereabouts? Or something like that. Oh, you're from Michigan, I studied there. You all are fantastic at that. So dialogue and questions, where are you from? Have you been here before? Has anything changed? That's something I'm interested to hear. Some people actually comment on the different crops of the field. Oh, this was different, like 2 years ago or something. And so that's really neat that they remember that. And why did you come back? I think those are really strong questions that engage people, and might even reveal some of those problem areas as well. So this where I hope this sort of helps the flow of what might help to organize your thoughts. I'm not expecting to have you guys submit these to me. I'm not giving you a letter grade or anything like that. I'm giving you this as a resource to organize your thoughts, and to hopefully, I can grade yours if you want, Patrick, but to organize your thoughts and to think of transitions, think of questions to ask. We have been conversing all of our lives, right? Ever since we learned how to talk. My daughter's whole conversation right now is no, that's it. But we are conversing, right? Since we've learned how to talk. And so we're good at that, but let's be intentional about our conversation. And so that's really my push here today. We've taken up a bit of your time, but I appreciate you all hanging in there and really participating. My heart was just swelling. I'm a little bit emotional of a person, but my heart was just swelling listening to each of you connect and really try to put all of your feelings or passions into one sentence. So I appreciate that effort. I really, really do. So like Robert said, or Bob said, I will be sending out those sheets on Friday in the VIP email about any problems or concerns that you guys are experiencing. I will also resend out this interpretive panel scavenger hunt, because I would love for you guys to do that, and make sure that's attached. Also this recording as well. But I just want to remind you, like Bob said, research shows that human interaction is the most effective way to interpret. We could have the most fancy visitor center that had robots or had this wall you can climb, or shows the soil you can dig up. We could have all of that, but it, like he said, cannot ask them questions. And so that personal touch is so valuable, and I appreciate each of you coming to the training today and being willing to give that personal touch this summer. So you guys are such a valuable resource. I really appreciate you.
Jordan, I'd like to make an observation, and
Yeah.
I really want to underline this. Thank you for your presentation from your experience. And one of the things I want to observe, and I want to use it to reinforce a point I made earlier. Our goal in interpretation is to build that connection, and the durable connection. I think what Jordan, in telling her own story, showed us is the power of having made that connection in 2003 to the exit glacier, to a place, with her family. And ultimately, something about that experience brought her back and brought her into a professional community of doing that work. And if somehow we can, in our own way, individually, with this visitor or that visitor, make that kind of connection so that, Jordan's example is played out on other people. There was some magic that happened in 2003 for you, Jordan. And look at you now, and look at how you've changed your life, and you've made this commitment to this kind of work. And I would just underscore her commendation of all of you. You're doing that every day, whether you know it or not. And so it is profoundly valuable. And there are a lot more Jordans out there that we need to influence. That's where the future is in this work and this critical work we do at EB. So thanks for using yourself as an example of what we're really trying to do. And again, I'm really impressed with the range that I see in this volunteer group, and I really commend you for your commitment. We're gonna absorb, I've taken notes here. I'm available. Jordan can share with you my contacts. Eventually, we're going to be developing themes that I hope you can contribute more to, and that we are certainly going to share with you if you're stuck on any given point. But we're really, really trying to update this program make the visitor experience the best it can be. And you all are the front line on this. So thank you. And thank you, Jordan, for inviting me. I appreciate this.
Thank you for coming, Bob. I really appreciate your assistance. Yes.
You know,
All right.
one-
Oh, go ahead. Oh, two
one-
final words. Please feel free to come check out any books on interpretation. I have a stack of them here for the library, and we have more. So if you're interested in this and want to read more, I have resources from you. And also come pick up one of our brand new visitor guides. I would love for you guys to come take a look. So 2 reasons to stop by and see me. Okay, that is all I have. If you guys have any questions, you're free to go. But if you want to stay on and chat or have some questions, feel free. We can keep chatting for a little while here.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Jordan.
Yes, thank you, Patrick.
Thank you. Love that, Al.
Rich had a question or
Oh,
comment.
Rich, go ahead.
It's more of a comment, and it goes back to when I first started hiking the Eby's Bluff Trail. I did not have any awareness. I started down in the parking lot at the beach, did not have any awareness that there was a Jacob Eby house. I vaguely became aware that the cemetery was up there, and I made a few, quote unquote side trips on the trail that goes out to the bluff going the opposite way to go up and look at the Pioneer Cemetery. And at the time I was doing this, the Jacob Eby house really wasn't open. The point of my saying this is I think there's a lot of people that start down on a bluff that have no idea about the historic resources that are nearby, either the Jacob Eby house. They may see the ferry house, but it's not really obvious how you would walk to it. You don't want to go up that road on foot. It's kind of dangerous on that curve, or the cemetery for that matter. And I'm wondering if maybe at some point some interpretive signs down near the beach pointing those out to people would be helpful.
Rich,
Good thought.
Rich?
Sally?
yeah. I've been after Washington State Park and also Kristen for years to put more signage down there and to replace or update the kiosk there. When I'm a volunteer for Nature Conservancy down there, I'm always pointing out where the Jacob Eby house is, because you kind of see it on the map there. And most people who are visiting don't know about it and don't know how close it is, and that it is a short walk. And they can park up by the cemetery. So signage is huge. It's an ongoing problem.
Jordan, do you want to comment about our work with Chris and the team?
Yeah, so state parks are actually working to replace the panels down there and to include different information. Some of that is quite rough looking, and so it's definitely due for an update. I will definitely forward those thoughts on to Chris as well, as they're already making these changes and seeing what we can do to include that in possibly that 3-sided kiosk or something down there. I know they're open for some suggestions there. And another thought I had, which I don't know if this is even feasible or not, but sort of brainstorming off of that, is we have our sign saying the house is open, but I wonder if we could do another sandwich board now towards the trail, take that down there, pushing them this way. That might be quite a hike with the sandwich board though. So I'm not, I'm not sure if everyone would love that, but it might be another way to push people to the house when it's open. Just a thought, and I'll keep brainstorming off of that. Bob, did you have anything?
Yeah. The one thought that I have, and this is fairly general. We all have our own particular passion, the things that we like to do, whether it's hiking. I'm a birder, so I bird the whole reserve and I photograph. But one of the things that we're up against here is just in terms of visitor management is distributing people across the landscape. When you think about 18,000 acres, there's a lot of space, and why should all of them be concentrated on a mile of trail? So I think it's really good, not just to familiarize yourself with the interpretive messages that are available in different places, but to be able to suggest to somebody that, oh, I see you've got some binoculars. Have you spent time down at Crockett Lake? That's the preeminent birding place in Island County. Or if you're interested in old ships, you should go out to the wharf in Coopville. But think about ways that we can distribute people. And as you're conversing with them and getting a glimpse into what their interests are, send them to places that they might not think of. The native history language is interpreted quite well at the museum. It's also interpreted quite well. The sign's going to be replaced at Monroe Landing. So just be thinking, how do we spread people out? And you're going to have the best sense of interest that people have and places they may go elsewhere to participate in the activity of their choice.
There have been birding guides at the house, and there will be some new trails open this summer and next year by the Whidbey Communal Land Trust. There'll be an additional about 8 miles of trails with 2 or 3 different parking spots.
Where, just out of curiosity, where will that be?
Pardon?
Oh, I'm just curious as to where that will be.
Where what will be?
The new trails you're speaking of.
They're not open yet, and they will be, one it could be reached through the rhododendron park. The other from where the Nass Preserve is, on what is that, Engle
Road, yeah.
Engle, and I forget what the other parking lot is. And they will not connect, but I'm hoping that by 22 they will connect, so you could make a circle.
Yeah, great. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all for your time today. I really appreciate Sally, Carol, Rich. I haven't spent a season with you yet, but I really appreciate each of you being on here, and hopefully see. Yeah, no, and that's totally understandable. And Lynn and Sheila on there as well. I appreciate all of you guys coming today, and Bob for joining us. I look forward to getting to know each of you more as we tackle this season together. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.